Black people of Reddit, what is the most overt or offensive example of racism you have experienced, and where were you when it happened? Serious. I'm 28 now, but when I was a teenager I was followed in stores, harassed by police, and called out of my name on multiple occasions. Monkey, coon for example. I was an honor roll student that had a job at 16. But I guess that didn't matter. If I had to pick one story that stands out, it would have to be walking home in high school, in Clovis, CA at the time, because mom was a recruiter stationed in Fresno. After dark, it was about 10 PM and I wasn't doing anything illegal as I was just walking home from a neighbor's house. An officer pulled over out of nowhere, cutting me off, and hopped out of his car like I was some thug. He proceeded to make me take a drug test, then handcuffed me and placed me in the back of his cruiser. He drove to the address I provided and walked me to the door in cuffs. When my dad opened the door, the officer was a bit taken back to see a white man. My dad said, "What are you doing with my son and why is he cuffed?" The officer replied, "He's out late loitering and I wanted to make sure he got home instead of in trouble." My dad asked the officer to quickly walk with him to the end of the street where the local high school's basketball courts were visible. On the basketball courts at that exact moment there were a group of roughly 15 white kids, some playing basketball and others talking in a group. My dad said to the cop, "What about the white kids that are out playing basketball at 11 PM some nights at the school? Why don't you cuff them and take them home?" The officer just uncuffed me and walked away. It was the first time I felt like I was different for being black, as I had spent my entire childhood on military bases. My father summed it up by saying, "Welcome to the real world." Edit. Wasn't expecting so many responses. I'll read through them and respond accordingly. The one thing I want to clarify is I'm half black, half white. My skin tone is darker than most mixed people, so I'm never asked if I'm half white. It's just assumed I'm black, and maybe Hispanic. My family was living in Chesapeake, Virginia, in a majority white neighborhood called Camelot. I was around 7 and my older sister was 8. It was a summer evening and we were walking down the main street of the block to get some Slurpees from the 7-Eleven on the corner. On the way back, we saw these two white teens walking their huge German shepherds coming in the opposite direction. When they saw us, they let the dogs loose and they came charging at us. We dropped the Slurpees and scrambled up onto the hood, and eventually the roof, of a car parked on the side of the road. The dogs just ran around the car and barked. My older sister asked if the dogs bite because we needed to get home. One of the teens said they don't bite ends, they kill ends. They held us hostage on the car for a good 10 minutes, laughing the entire time. I guess they eventually got bored because they put the dogs back on the leashes and walked off, but not before telling us if they see us outside after the sun goes down again they will have their dogs rip our end throats out. We told our mom when we got home. We were not allowed to go to the 7-Eleven again without an adult with us. I spent most of that summer in the house. I had heard my relatives talk about the racist poop they experienced at the hands of cops and white business owners, but it was my first real time experiencing it face to face. I was ducking 7 and just wanted a damn Slurpee. Instead, I got terrorized and humiliated for being brown. Edit. First gold in 4 years. Thanks, kind stranger. Wish it could have been for a happy topic. I am the youngest of 9 adopted children. My parents are white. My adoptive mother would always tell people that black kids come at a dime a dozen. She adopted us for the subsidy. Terrible mother and childhood. What in the hell? Most of the racism I've experienced is people saying things like, "You're one of the good ones" or "You don't look like you sound on the phone." The girl I roomed with in college even said, "I was worried when I met you because I thought you'd be like the other black girls." But the worst was probably the run-in I had with a friend's grandmother. My friend and I were going to a party that was kinda far away, so we decided it would be best to take one car. I told her I'd pick her up at her house. I pull up in the driveway and walk to her front door. An older Hispanic woman answers the door. I smile as I remembered my friend told me her grandmother was coming in town. I introduce myself. As I'm about to say that I was there to pick up my friend, she interrupts me. "We don't want any." She starts to close the door, so I lean forward to try to tell her again that I was there for my friend. She shouts, "We don't want anything," and slams the door in my face. I took a step back for about 10 seconds. I assume my friend's mother heard us shouting because I heard footsteps coming down the stairs. Her mother opens the door and says hi. A second later I see my friend's grandmother walking back towards the door. She screams, "You ends and trying to sell things." Go and tries to slam the door again. My friend's mother catches the door and starts yelling at her mother-in-law in Spanish. I was so shaken up, I couldn't do anything but stand there. Little backstory. A bunch of my friends are Asian, so I tend to spend a fair amount of time in China and Koreatown in Toronto. You want to feel out of place? Be a 6 foot 215 pounds big, burly black guy in a legit, hole in the wall, Korean restaurant. So this one time we decide to go to our usual Korean barbecue place for dinner. Keep in mind, we've been there countless times before, so it's not like this is my first time. We get, what I assume to be a new waiter. Judging by his complete lack of an accent, I assume he's second generation, so the kid clearly should have known better. From the second we sit down to the literal moment we're out the door, 2 hours later, it's nothing but fried chicken, grape pop, watermelon. Insert black stereotype, jokes and comments. Now, when I go out I tend to code shift hard. It just makes life easier. This is, of course, a nice way of saying that I took all these comments like a bitch. Even tipped the guy before I left. All because I didn't want to be that black guy. I honestly felt dirty for the rest of the night. I've been back a few times since and have yet to see him again. My hope is somebody else, with a spine, got his ass fired for being a complete dick. How did your friends react to all the comments? Completely shocked but too uncomfortable to say anything since I was seemingly just rolling with it. When we left I had to explain to them what code shifting was, why we do it, and the disproportionate amount of trouble a black guy can get in if tries to start something, even if he knows he's right. I'd never heard of code shifting. Would you explain it for me as well? Code shifting refers to the act of tailoring your speech and mannerisms to better fit your surroundings. We all do it to some degree. The way I speak with my white friends is distinctly different from how I speak with my black friends and family. Both of those are completely different than the way I talk when I'm out in public, dealing with authority figures or meeting someone for the first time. I have the normal story of being followed around by people at stores, but something that I find offensive is how many times I get "you're pretty" for a black girl. I know it sounds like a small thing or a compliment, but it's not to me. It sounds like a backhanded compliment, like because I'm black I'm not supposed to be pretty. I've spent my entire life in the suburbs and have really only experienced one major act of racism. When I was 9, we were applying to private schools. I don't remember which school it was at the time, but I had shadowed a student at the school that day. When we came home, we got a threatening voicemail from one of the students' parents saying something to the tune of "Don't you send your goddamn black child to this school." It was some long-winded rant that we didn't entertain the entirety of. Frankly, I don't remember too much about it, but I honestly don't think my mom ever really let go of it. Needless to say, I didn't go to that school. That poop is the worst when you realize people still do this. My wife works at a rural school in NC, and this last year they had a big redistricting ordeal. A bunch of higher income families now had to go to this poor rural school with a lot of blacks and Hispanics. One parent called and said her child would not be riding the bus with those kids. It was 2014. Played high school football at an all-white school in a predominantly white conference. One time, even before the snap guy fired off, I was in the O-line and hit me at a angle, wrenching my head back. My coach yelled at me because he thought I had flinched offside, but after the scrimmage the other team's coach came over to me and apologized for what happened because he knew why it happened. Also, many times after games when the teams line up for the handshakes or whatnot, I was often intentionally skipped over by the entire team not wanting to touch me. As an athlete, nothing makes me angrier. If you respect the sport, you respect all players, regardless of their team or their skin color. If you can't do that, then you have no business playing. Ugh. I'm sorry, people are poopy. I used to be an assistant manager at Domino's. One day, I took a customer's order and went to the side to start making it. About a minute or so later, that same customer called my co-worker, which I hang out with sometimes, let's call him John, over and whispered something to him and then left the store. John had a weird look in his face and come over to me and told me that the customer asked him why wasn't I on a leash. Holy ducking poop. Something similar happened to me working in a movie theater when I was in college, NC 1990. The comment wasn't quite that bad, but close. I was shocked and I blurted out, "What the duck kind of racist arsehole are you?" I still have problems with my filter at times. The guy was pretty much speechless for a few seconds. I think he really expected me to be okay with what he said. Then he demands to speak to our manager, who is Latina but fairly dark skinned. When she shows up, he doesn't say a thing and turns around and walks out. Son refund even. Once in middle school I spent weeks studying for a spelling bee. It comes down to me and another girl and my teacher, who made it clear on how we were treated she didn't think highly of the black students. She just kinda doesn't hear me. I spelled the word right and the class confirmed that she told me I was wrong and won't be going to the spelling bee for our county. I was heartbroken because the girl she said won was in tears because she knew something was wrong. First night in college, me and my black friends walked into a college party with nothing but whites. They cut the music off and stared us down until we left, then immediately turned on rap and started woohooing when we left. Later that night I had eggs thrown at me by a passing car as someone yelled "Jiji Buji Ren." I grew up in a neighborhood that was mostly white, but my group of friends has always been really diverse. I was walking home from one of my friend's house pretty late, around 12 AM, when a squad car pulled up beside me and asked me what I was doing. I simply said I was walking home. They asked me where I live. I point a few houses down the street in this very quiet neighborhood. They then use the "well, we've been hearing that there have been potential burglaries going on recently" line. This happened probably 5 to 6 times over the course of a year. I was about 14/15 at the time. It just got so annoying to be typecasted so early in life. For me it was in a church in Indiana. I was visiting there for a weekend. Being a Christian, I wanted to go to church on Sunday, so I googled churches and found the nearest one. Sunday morning, I noticed confused stares as I walked into the building. I was confused myself. When I finally entered the church hall, it slowly dawned on me why. This was a white-only church and I was not welcome. I was shocked. This church was on a college campus which had people of all races, yet the parishioners by their prejudice had managed to maintain a white-only congregation without being vocal or honest about it. I was already in, so I decided to sit through the service. It was uncomfortable. The kids especially didn't hide their shock. They stared, pointed and whispered to their friends the whole time. One of them was surprised I could sing, but they were only kids, so I understood. The adults though. I rushed out as soon as the service was over. I'm still scarred. I had never really understood racism before this event. I grew up in Africa and was a college student in a major city US where it was very diverse. Edit. Tick up a little typing this. It's not so much how I was treated, although that's bad enough by itself. It's that segregation still exists, and I've encountered it. A terrible experience, but I learned a lot from it. Edit 2. Wow, this blew up overnight. I'm sorry I wasn't able to answer most of your questions. I'm in a different time zone. I posted this and went to bed. I'm getting many questions about where this happened. It was in Terre Haute. The most recent, having my former supervisor tell me that the reason I didn't get the job the first time around was because our boss wanted to hire the pretty white girl, as opposed to me, and only then hired me because she screwed up so utterly. I spent the first 3 months cleaning up behind her and hearing how articulate and classy I was from the good old boys. And then there was the time one of the VPs asked to touch my hair. Okay, so I'm just a regular old 1/2 black 1/2 white person, yawn. Boring, right? But anyway, my dad is the black one but he's from West Africa, so I guess that's a little different, but the thing that stands out most is our last name. Apparently if someone else shares it they are at least a second cousin. Def a strong blood tie there. So I was in the final hours of studying for my nursing boards, which I was doing at my dad's private practice. He is a doctor and we own the building outright, like 100%. I'm getting ready to lock up as it's about 130 m2 or something. The building is flanked by a trailer park. a Wawa, and a hotel, which can draw a little bit of riffraff at times, but the area is mostly safe. I poked my head around to make sure no one was walking by as I walked to my car, and I noticed a police car, SUV, in the parking lot. They often use our parking lot to catch speeders, and it's a good place to hide, so I was actually not bothered by it at all ever because it made me feel extra safe. So I'm locking up. I sound the alarm, lock the door, and smiled and waved to cop as I got in my car. As soon as I turn on the engine, he pulls up behind my car, blocking me so I can't pull out. This is how the conversation went, pretty much verbatim. Me, pulls down window, hey, can I help you with something? Cop, in a mocking tone, what you mean, what are you doing? Me, pretty taken aback and also exhausted, you were here as I locked up, now I'm just trying to leave to go home. Cop, at 3 AM. What are you seeing patients? Don't give me that. Do you even work here? Like, what is this? Me, I'm studying. This is my father's practice. Here is my license. His name is on the sign and it's my last name. It's right there. I don't understand what's happening right now. Can I go? I'm tired. He shines his flashlight on me and I'm wearing my nursing school sweatshirt, and my Kaplan Kleck study books are huge and are in my passenger seat and are highly visible. Cop, is that where you'd go to school? Me, yeah. Cop, you could be anybody, I mean, who's that other person on the sign? Would you have a problem with you being here? It doesn't look right. How do I know you are supposed to be here or that it isn't just that you have the same last name? Me, I'm losing my ducking patience at this point, so I'm getting flustered. Oh come on, this is too much. I've sat here with you for 25 minutes and I've given you my identification. You see that is my last name, that I own this car, that I have a key, I have a nursing school sweatshirt on, and I'm the only first and last name inserted here in the United States, and you're still asking me this? As far as the other name, that's our nurse practitioner who does not own this building and cannot practice independently. I just don't even know what this is right now. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be rude, I'm exhausted and I want to go home, and I didn't do anything, I just want to go to sleep. Cop, okay, well just give me a couple minutes, I'm going to run your information on your license and registration, and you will be out of here soon. I was ducking done right there. He had his chance and now he's just going to delay me further. Duck, no, this is private property, my dad's private property that he slaved away for. The jerk was not going to delay me further. Me, no, I gave it to you already. I know that you cannot detain me as I did nothing wrong. This is not even a routine traffic stop. So am I free to go? I have to work and my boards are 2 days away, can I go please? Cop, you know what, no problem. You just remember that next time your dad needs help from the police and they don't show up, you can remember this right here. This is when he literally threw my license in my face. It hit me on the nose and he chuckled and muttered bitch as he walked away. He followed me for about 8 miles after that. I was shocked and freaked out, and I regretted it the second I pulled out of there. What if my dad got hurt and needed help and this creep was called to the scene and just decided not to go? I've had an experience before where I once tripped the alarm and the cop, while inquisitive and persistent, was still respectful and really was looking out for my dad's best interest. I've had people call me N, make fun of Africa, and say terrible poop, but this was so tough on me, mainly because I had everything to prove it was okay. I was there, on private property. My parents are educated professionals and I was becoming one. I had no record, my skin is light, and I don't have an urban affect. All I could think of was my dad's safety, and what if I was darker, sounded like I came from the city, and my parents were blue collar. My own privilege saved me from what could have been a beatdown or use, but I still felt low and non-deserving. And as if my father's accomplishments meant nothing. As if he can't have his own kids on his own property at night. It was a very ducked up feeling. Age 6. Kid told me my parents told me black people aren't allowed on this jungle gym. Well, my skin is brown, so I didn't see a problem. Age 9. A girl tells my little sister can't be her friend cause she's black. I hate seeing my sister cry. She's too tough for that. Age 12-19. Getting followed around several stores. My cousin's white friend stole things while him and I walked around. Very blatantly, I might add. If they looked at them, they'd have been caught. Age 19. Cops throw me on the ground and search me at gunpoint while dogs bark loudly around my genitals. All cause I was running across a parking lot at night to get to a party with actual girls there. Lately it's been subtle, like my co-worker saying good boy when I address the comments on my pull requests. Or that same co-worker not letting my work get merged in until someone else says the same exact thing. I don't know where to start. In Michigan, I live about 30 minutes away from a town called Howell, where allegedly the KKK started. I was hanging out with this girl that lives there. I met online at her house. Her mom came home and saw me and the first thing that came out of her mouth was, "Do you guys smell fried chicken and watermelon?" I didn't know what to say. Another example is every time I walk by a white person that is sitting in their car, I always hear the sound of them locking their door. This happened pretty frequently. There is plenty more examples. I had never experienced racism personally until I got to college. During summer orientation, the incoming freshmen slept overnight at the school for 2 nights. The first night, as I was going to sleep, I heard a group of people outside my window talking about how much they hated Ns, and how they hoped they weren't attacked by any. Then, one night I was partying in the dorms, and as I tried to enter my friend's room, his other friend would not let me in and said to me through the door, "So young so high, we don't want Ns like you in here." I punched that dude in the throat, and then walked to a park and cried by myself. That was the first time I had ever been personally targeted that aggressively. Another time, I was stepping off of the elevators in the dorms to go to a different friend's room, and as I walked through the hall I passed a door right when someone said, "These guys weren't just black, they were Ns." This was my introduction to adulthood. Well, here is the most hurtful. It was 7th grade, you know, when boy and girls start liking each other, and there was this one kid that was always flirting with me. We started going out, as they called it back then, even though we didn't go anywhere except meet each other up at the skating rink in groups of friends. I thought he was awesome and he thought I was awesome, and we were having a fun kiddie relationship. Well, a few weeks later, he stops answering the phone when I call him at night. I ask him if he will be meeting me up at the skating rink for a party when I see him at school, and he tells me we have to break up because his dad doesn't want him dating anyone black. Goes on further to say his dad said black girls are raised to be too tough because black men are babied and not raised to be men, so his father didn't want him to go through dealing with a girl that was raised like that. WTF. Another thing that pisses me off about interracial relationships is when people say that a girl has jungle fever if she's dating a black guy or slept with a black guy. It's like they don't even realize how dehumanizing that is for a black person to hear. I told that to one guy who said that a girl had jungle fever because she slept with a black guy, so he didn't find her attractive anymore. He couldn't grasp why I would be offended that he thinks it's taboo for a white girl to be involved with a black guy and that doing so makes her undesirable. Like, just think about the name jungle fever. It's implying that black guys are savages or animals and very primitive, and that something must be wrong with a girl to get involved with a guy. Like they have to have fallen under a spell to want to be involved with black guy. Moved into a rental on the backside of a cornfield on a family's property. Mom, white. Stepdad, white. My older brother, black mix. Me, black mix. And my youngest brother at the time, white. All the dealings were done with mom, stepdad and baby brother. We lived there for a few months, never meeting the owners. I go riding my bike around the small roads, cut through the property and come across their house. Saw a my age girl riding her bike and went to go make friends. We hang out for a little bit and dad comes stomping over asking who the duck I was. I explain who I am. He tells me to head home, so I do. 2 days later mom tells us we have to move. That was the worst of blatant and subtle racism my family experienced. Duck Goodland, Kansas. A few years ago, while I was still in school, I went to a school trip to Greece. As has already been said, some European countries can be pretty bad with racism, but I'd been lucky enough to be brought up with very tolerant people, to the point where I'd never experienced much overt racism until that point. While getting past border control, all of my white classmates got through very easily and rapidly. However, when the line came to me, it was different. The officer seemed suspicious of everything I said, from the subject I was studying, the same as the last 20 people to go through, to even my origin of birth. After a good 15 minutes, I was still willing to give this person the benefit of the doubt. Strong, thorough border controls aren't a bad thing, and as I said, I was fairly sheltered up to this point. It only started to dawn on me what was wrong when I was taken aside to go to a line for the interrogation room. Every single black person on the plane, and one man with a turban, was in this line. My stomach dropped in a way it hasn't before or since as I stood there taking it in. Thankfully, a teacher noticed my absence and came back to give the officer an earful. It took a few minutes, but I made it into the country eventually. My teacher is a very collected, intellectual type, and I've honestly never seen him so furious. I'm grateful that he cared as much as he did, but at the time I was just shocked at the situation. Greece turned out to be a beautiful country for the most part, but that soured my day somewhat. The first time someone called me into my face, I was 7 years old and on the playground at school. In high school, a close friend told me I was the whitest black person she'd ever met because I was so well educated. It was supposed to be a compliment. It was not. The first time I went to visit my husband's family on the day of his little brother's graduation, his dad found out I was coming and freaked out and refused to have me in the house. I had to hang out with one of my husband's friends and her family, pretty much total strangers to me, while my husband, then boyfriend, went to his brother's graduation. He did not sit with his family. That friend and their family though. More recently, another friend told me I wasn't really black because I didn't talk that way. All of these people were white. By the way,